Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the show where a real statistics professor gives you sports betting tips. I'm your host, Professor Sides. For the latest updates and information, you can follow me on Twitter at Professor Sides. This Major League Baseball episode covers ALDS Game 5, Guardians and Yankees, and hop back on and talk about this game. I already did an episode about this game when it was scheduled to be played on Monday, but there's a lot of things that have changed. So we're going to have a quick episode here and talk about all those different things. I think there's 3 or 4 things I really want to talk about that I think will be interesting to you about this game. But in case you're new here, check out the webpage on that banner for a primer of explanation of what we do here. It's there on the screen, www.pickswiththeprofessor.com/new. Pause if need be. Otherwise, the goal here is to share some information about this game, give you some things to think on, and explain why certain plays are or are not being made. I never recommend blindly tailing or fading any pick, but rather to hear the justifications and thought processes to make sure you're fully on board with me or against me before investing your hard-earned money. As always, remember that there are no locks in gambling, so what I provide are loves, likes, and leans. It is A, B, and C grades. Indicate my confidence level with respect to scaling wagers. However, please understand that good and bad variance will occur. So as much as I'd like to say we'll be profitable each and every day, that is an impossible reality for any gambler. Yesterday, break even because no action or anything. But if you haven't yet, check out the NLCS Game 1 episode. I'll put that right here for you to click on if you haven't watched that yet. Phillies and Padres tonight. Otherwise, we got this afternoon game here to talk about. But before we get to it, please hit that like button if you're on YouTube. If you're yet, please consider subscribing or following. It's free, and if you turn on notifications, you'll miss any of the college basketball, MLB, or college football content that this channel provides. We've also got that Patreon page if you're looking to get some extra benefits. Membership starts at just $3 a month. It gets you the play of the day or plays of the day, where I'm going to isolate either my favorite of all the A picks, or sometimes there's only one A play, so I know we're all on that, so I'm going to isolate something else that I really like. Also, try to give you something extra. There's some good benefits, and then if there's other tiers if you want some more things that I've put together to try to provide y'all some extra benefit help in your sports betting. Otherwise, we'll get right to it. The line is courtesy of Bet Online. Sign up link in the show description. Current as of the time of this recording here on Tuesday morning. As a reminder, the price you see on the screen in parentheses, that's the moneyline price needed for those sites to reach a certain level moneyline play according to Sideline. Going to start off with the scenario that I think is the most likely. What's listed right now is Aaron Savali going for the Guardians, Nestor Cortez for the Yankees. A couple things to note. First off, I tend to bring it up every so often, so maybe you're already familiar with this, but if you're not, every time you make a baseball bet on the money line, you have options. You can hit selected, listed, opposing, or action. That's to do with the starting pitcher. Selected means your guy goes, opposing means their guy goes, listed means both have to go, and action means it doesn't matter who goes, you want action on this game. Generally speaking, I tell people 9 times out of 10 we want to hit selected. The only time we want to hit action is if we are backing a team with a bad pitcher and we don't really care who goes, because it's not about our pitcher, it's about the other team, about our offense or something like that. Or if it's a bullpen game, we don't really care which guy starts. We know it's a bullpen game, right? So there's a few times where you're going to want to hit action. You almost never want to hit opposing unless it's really about that guy going, but not yours. It's really rare. Can count probably on one hand the number of times where I thought that's been applicable. Most of the time you want to hit selected. You want your guy to go, and you don't care if the other guy goes, because if the other guy doesn't go, it's usually a downgrade. It's usually a last-minute scratch to someone worse, right? This is not that scenario. This is a scenario where if you're backing the Yankees, you actually are going to want to hit listed in this one because you want Savali to go, because if it's Bieber, you've lost a lot of value here because the line's going to drop 25-ish cents, 15, 35 cents. I'm not really sure. Somewhere in that ballpark if it goes to Bieber, and then you can just re-enter the market at a better price, or you just don't want to have action on it because the price you've paid on the Yankees is going to be way too much. So if you're on the Yankees, think about that here with how you're making your wager, because you do want Savali to go. He is the weaker pitcher. I'm going to start with the Yankee side of this with Nestor Cortez because I broke down this game with Talion. But to be honest, Cortez on 3 days rest is not better than Talion, in my opinion. I don't think he's worse either. I think it's pretty much a wash. Cortez is a better pitcher, absolutely, but there is an effect to going on 3 days rest. We know this historically. We have enough data. It's been analyzed ad nauseum. And I can tell you it's similar to the effect of what happens when you get deeper into the ballgame and you're throwing your 80th pitch, your 100th pitch, your 110th pitch, etc. It's not that velocity won't be there. His velocity will be there today, 100%. It's just things are just enough off that your location tends to falter. We occasionally do see pitchers pitch well on 3 days rest. So I'm not going to say every pitcher on 3 days rest pitches poorly. That's wrong. But on average, pitchers get 10 to 20% worse on 3 days rest. Their ERA, their expected ERA, their FIP, their strikeout rate, their walk rate, their hit rate, everything. Everything gets just a little bit worse on 3 days rest. And Cortes is good, but as I mentioned before, his underlying metrics suggest he's not great. Good, not great. And good pitchers on 3 days rest take a little bit of a ding and turn into solid pitchers, and that's exactly what Taillon is. So I think Sidelines moved this number about 5 cents going from Taillon to Cortes on 3 days rest. They go a lot more if it was Cortes on 4 days rest, right? So that's why there's not really much of a change in this number for me from before. So my handicap on the game, if it is Cortes and Civale, is mostly the same. And I wanted to hop on it and say that, because otherwise I feel like you might be questioning or curious, right? And I was just saying it's about the same. I'm still, the price hasn't changed too much. It changed a little bit. I'm still in the Guardians. I'm going to take them as a B grade run line pick. The price right now is minus 160 on that run line. Same thing I said before, split between run line and money line. I think money line's a solid investment. As you can see on screen there, plus 141 gets us in the door for that Guardians play being profitable, being a solid B grade pick. The current price is plus 146. Solid, but not good enough to get to an A grade. Last night, I saw it get to about plus 150. I've not seen anything that gets to an A grade on the Guardians. Maybe it was there for a hot second at a book or two, but it wasn't very long. So for right now, I think the Guardians are a good B grade play. Run line, money line, I think it's kind of personal preference. I'm going to go with the run line. I always think there's a little bit of extra value on the run line. With the road team, you have a little bit extra advantage. It's just a personal preference. I don't think it's anything magical. It's just, if you like money line, go money line. I think there's some value there. We just have to understand the Guardians are less than 50% likely to win this game, according to Sideline to be 42%. But if you win this 42% of the time at plus 146, which is again the current price, you're making money. So it's just personal preference how you want to play. I think the Guardians decide to be on here. Not really much of a change, because I think Cortes on 3 days rest isn't really that exciting. Total in this one's gone up a little bit. Weather's looking nice. Wind's starting to look like it's going to be pretty strong, closer to 10 miles an hour here as this morning versus last night's look at it. And I've got that total at 7.3. The current total is 7. To me, 7's a pass, I think, at this point. If it gets to 7.5, I kind of think the same thing. If we see any 6.5s drop back in, I think I'd go under. I think I'd go over 6.5. Last night, 6.5 was a little bit scary because the weather was looking like it wasn't going to be quite a strong a wind. So I was kind of saying didn't really like the over 6.5. Now it's up to 7. Now I don't. It's the way I would go. I would go over 7 if I had to play it. But right now, I just don't love messing with a 7, given that Sideline says 7.3. So that's my handicap if Civale pitches. If it's Bieber, the price changes a little bit. First off, that totals drop from 7.3 to 6.9. It's about 0.4 of a run. And so that's going to affect how you view the total. It's also going to affect how you view the side. I've got this going from with Civale. I've got Yankees minus 138 to Bieber. I've got Yankees minus 114. In this case, it's a 24-cent difference. Note, though, that it's not that Bieber comes in and it's 24 cents. Bieber comes in and it's more about a probability adjustment, and that probability adjustment affects the price different based off of where the price lies, right? This probability adjustment up in the 200s would be probably more like 50 cents, right? And if it was closer to even money, it'd actually be more like 18 cents. So you can't just say it's worth a certain price because that's not the way the world works. The world works in terms of probability, and then we just adjust the probability to price. So it's kind of just an interesting nugget there. If you care about that, if not, that's fine too. It doesn't really matter. My price with Bieber would be Yankees minus 114, and you can see on screen there. So if this doesn't out, you come back, you can find this spot right here, 9-minute mark or so of this video, and you can say, here's what the prices are needed for either side. I can't speculate on that because if it is Bieber, I don't know what the numbers will be here, but obviously I think the Guardians much closer to 50-50 on this one and a little bit low over total if Bieber goes. So again, just to recap here, the things I want to talk about. First off, if you're backing the Guardians as I am with Civale, then you don't want to hit listed because you don't want to have to care, right? You want action on this game because if Bieber does go, things have gone in our favor. So if you're on the Guardians, opposing us wouldn't matter. You don't really care if Cortes goes or Taillon goes. It's probably the same. Really, you just want action. Okay, so if you're on the Guardians right now with Civale, you want action. If you're on the Yankees and Savali is still there, you want listed, because if it switches to Bieber, the price is going to change. That's the first thing. Second thing, again, overall handicap doesn't really change much from what I had before. Still think Guardians is the right side. Not an A-grade play like the first games of the series were, where again we were profiting on that, splitting 2 and 2 on those plus odds. Money line plays, one of them was a run line, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, we got the plus odds on the money line 2 winners, so we've been profitable with the Guardians here. Still like the Guardians, just don't like them as much as I like them in games 1 through 4. And the last thing here are the prices for if it does happen to be Bieber. Applying the same penalty to Bieber as I am to Cortez. So Bieber, this is not full strength Bieber on this. So in this case, if it's Bieber Cortez, both pitchers get a drawback. So it kind of works out where if both end up going on 3 days rest, that the price doesn't really move that much. The probability stays about the same of who's going to win. The only thing that's really affected on that penalty is the total shut up a little bit more. If I wasn't applying the penalty for these 2 pitchers, the total for this, I'd be very comfortable saying should be 6.5 rather than 6.9. So just the thing to keep in mind, if we end up with a bunch of pitchers on 3 days rest, that it just opens itself up to more likelihood to have struggling pitchers. Last thing to note here before we sign off, there's rumor of Savali maybe starting and Bieber going middle innings. I don't think that means anything, really. I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. The Guardians bullpen is legit good. I've mentioned that before, so you know how I feel about the model feels about that. You probably can agree with that. Just everyone knows, right? The Guardians bullpen's good. I'm not breaking news here. Bieber coming in on short rest to go innings, say 4 through 6, doesn't really help them. It doesn't really hurt them either. They got so many good relievers that the only scenario where Bieber coming in a pin really would help would be potentially if Savali really struggles in the first inning and, gets out with, 1 run, leaves the bases loaded. Second inning, struggles again, gets up to the top of the lineup, right? Let's say Judge is hitting 2-hole again, gets up to the top of the lineup, gets the last guy out. It's 2 innings, 1 run, but a lot of pitches, a lot of struggling. And they say, we'll bring Bieber into the 3rd inning. Now, maybe that benefits a little bit because otherwise it's kind of hard to find 7 innings from your relievers. So there's a situation like that where it maybe helps a little, but it's probably rounding error. I mean, the probability that happens and the probability Bieber comes in and is an upgrade, maybe worth a couple cents. Might give you a little bit of extra confidence in the Guardians. It might be a thing where if you go back to that first line I had and I said plus 153 is what's needed for an A grade, maybe you'll lower that to plus 150 because he could help there. Whereas the opposite situation for the Yankees, if Cortez struggles being on short rest, they bring Taillon in, is less of a help. It helps the Yankees out a little bit, but also their bullpen wasn't as good to start with. So it all kind of, again, it probably helps them a little bit, but just not a lot. So all that to say, there's a lot of things we can talk about that sound good, but from an a priori standpoint here, before anything happens and we know what's going to happen, a lot of these don't really affect much, right? What we can talk about is the starting pitcher and how that's going to affect things, but then the speculation about what reliever comes in on short rest, starters and relievers roles, it could help, it could hurt, but it's not really a thing where I'm trying to get to think about and trying to impart my opinion, which is seeing this a lot, looking at this data, right? It's not something that's going to move the needle. It might, in retrospect, be the game changer. And the game goes extra innings, and getting Bieber in the 11th inning might be helpful, right? These are all these wild scenarios. Ahead of time, we have no idea if that's going to matter. So ahead of time, I don't think that should really play a part in your handicap. It might play a part in your live betting if you're doing that based off how things play out. But ahead of time, I don't think this Bieber in relief, or now they've got Taillon in relief, I don't really think that changes much. I think you can kind of just handicap this as whoever the starter is, whether it's Bieber on short rest or Savali versus a short rest Cortez, is kind of the way I would analyze it, as opposed to if it was a situation where you got Bieber on short rest and a bad Guardians bullpen. Now that would really matter if he's going to pitch a relief. But the Guardians pen is so good, I'm not sure that means too much. So that's all I have for you today. Hopefully that was some good information for you to prep you for ALDS Game 5 Guardians Yankees. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Picks with the Professor. Don't forget to subscribe so you can ensure all the sports betting content we've run on this channel is dropped right to your feed. I will see you again tomorrow. College football content, more baseball championship series picks. Until then, as always, best of luck. And remember, you can get your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.